is the Orange Zone, sponsored by Apex Entertainment.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Orange Zone podcast. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston. Thanks so much for joining us. Packed, stacked episode for you today. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We're talking about Regy Thorpe, the new head coach of the Syracuse women's lacrosse program. We have some SU men's basketball updates for you. Who arrived on campus? There are some big names here. Most importantly, SU football class of 2026 roundup, recruits, commits, the whole 9 yards. What is Fran Brown doing behind the scenes? Because he's always up to something. Hello, Ashley. How are you?
Hello. Good. How are you? Yes, Fran Brown's always up to something. We thought we'd hit you all with a little SU sports. I mean, this is quite obviously the dead time of the year with lacrosse being over and football camp not yet started, but we do still have some bits and bops, some bits and pieces to talk about, and a new head coach to welcome to campus.
Yeah, Regy Thorpe introduced as the fourth women's lacrosse head coach in SU history in a press conference last Wednesday. I was there, and I'll tell you some things that I observed.
Sure.
I think that he truthfully is going to take this program in a different direction. I know this is something we spoke about at some point over the past few weeks, but again, this is a guy who went to Syracuse, All-American defender here. He has that defensive mindset. But even more importantly, he's from here.
Yeah.
He is a Jordan Elbridge kid. And I think just knowing Jordan Elbridge, that community, it's sort of this blue-collar mindset. He knows Syracuse. He's grown up here. And he takes that, just knowing everything about Syracuse, he takes that seriously. He has a lot of pride for this community, and he referred to this job as his dream job. Not everybody is coming in here and making such big proclamations, quite honestly.
Yeah, hearing him speak for the first time at this press conference last week, I mean, I think that's just what stuck out to me, right? This is quite literally a kid from the Syracuse area who got to live out his dream playing lacrosse at the Dome and winning a national championship, and now has ascended to essentially the highest level that he could in obtaining his dream job as the head coach of Syracuse women's lacrosse. Not to mention, he obviously has extensive experience already both playing at Syracuse and coaching at Syracuse. He coached under Gary Gait, like we've mentioned, for 9 years, from 2010 to 2019. He was his assistant coach. So all of that to me is just really good signs that you're getting someone here who knows the community, knows the school, knows the program, really is so ingrained in this community and in this area and in this I guess lacrosse community as well, that he's really going to know how to take this and where to take this program. So the quote that stuck out to me was along those lines from the presser. He said, quote, "When you're from the area, it just means so much. It means more when you're from here and you grew up watching. You care. You're going to go the extra mile. You're going to over prepare and do whatever it takes to bring the first championship to Syracuse." That is inspiring to me. I was a little wired hearing that.
That fires me up. Like,
Yeah.
if you care about Central New York lacrosse, if you care about Syracuse women's lacrosse, you know how long they've been fighting that battle, trying to climb that hill and get to the very top, which is becoming like national champions for the first time in program history. They haven't done it yet. And honestly, out of the people who they've had, I really get the sense that Regy Thorpe could be the guy who brings them that first title. It's clear that that's why they hired him. Wildhack was even saying those are the aspirations we have for this program. So it's nice to know that everyone's on the same page about that and chasing big goals. Here's another thing. You guys are going to love this. You might remember, and if you haven't checked out this episode, we want you to, but we had in two women's lacrosse athletes like 2 weeks ago because they're going to be competing in the Pala Women's Lacrosse Championship that starts this week for Team Haudenosaunee. One of those athletes was Allie Trice, who previously played at Syracuse when Regy Thorpe was there. When we asked her about Regy Thorpe at that time, she said he had dad energy. Well, other people must have been hearing this too, because Brent Axe, huge friend of the program, Syracuse.com amongst other things, he asked Regy Thorpe, a sentiment that we continue to hear is that you have dad energy. What do you think about that? Name a more dad one-liner than what he said. He said, dad energy is better than bad energy. I'm not kidding. Everybody started cheering.
Right.
There was a legitimate pause for applause. That is hysterical.
That is so funny. Yeah, I mean, right, I read that quote. He goes on to say, you're a coach, you're a dad. At the end of the day, the kids just want to feel valued. You know you can have those tough conversations with student athletes, with their parents, if they know that you care about their kid. That's sort of along the lines of everything Fran Brown's trying to do right now for Syracuse football, right? I think these high-level athletic programs can get so cold and callous now in the NIL and recruiting era. It all seems like it's a numbers game. But at the end of the day, when you have a coach that really cares about you as a person and your well-being, that does go a long way in recruiting. And honestly, we've already seen Regy Thorpe have some momentum in recruiting. There are 2 5-star women's lacrosse recruits that have committed to Syracuse in the past week since he was formally announced as head coach. One of them was Peyton Rothfuss, who is from Penfield. She just won the state championship at Penfield. She was formerly committed to Florida, where Regy Thorpe was. Turning her, bringing her to Syracuse. Another one is a girl right now currently at Fayetteville Manlius, also local. So I think it's a good sign to already see some of that recruiting momentum. Both of them, when they spoke on flipping their commitment, said that they were not planning to commit to Syracuse under the Kayla Trainer era. So for better or for worse, whatever those conversations were like, that is the reality of the situation. And he's pulling in some local kids, which is definitely what you have to do if you're Syracuse women's lacrosse.
That's what you want. You want local kids. At the same time, you also want to be casting a wide net. And the fact that he has been at Florida, the fact that he has been in other places, all of that is going to be so positive for recruiting. But to your point about that quote with the dad energy, that really stuck out to me because, yes, to your point, there's the NIL, and it does feel like a numbers game, especially in some of these sports. But for women's lacrosse, a sport that I feel like is not getting the majority of the money anyway, all the more important for you to just feel like you are valued as a person. I have to say, I've had quite a few, coaches in my women's lacrosse college career. There were some of them who did not change their coaching style based on the player. That works for someone like me. I don't mind somebody who's a little bit hard hitting. That fires me up. But I think that quite honestly, when you are dealing with, female athletes as well, you have to think about that. And I think cater a little bit to the player and what their best coaching style is. That actually might be true on the men's side too. And I think Fran Brown does do that, right? It's like you can tell that he's fierce and he is dedicated and he definitely has fire in him, but he's also not afraid to show you that he loves you.
Yeah.
That is a lost art. Like I'm going to be honest, as far as this idea of out with the old, in with the new, I'm on board with out with the old with this coaching style where everything has to be so hard hitting and you need to rough somebody up. And I know like that was sort of a style that used to be present, especially in like football and men's basketball. We don't have to do all that anymore though. Like it's okay you can, I think, inspire people and motivate people while being a strong leader and also being empathetic. That exists, and I think Regy Thorpe is here to prove that.
Well, and I agree with you that I sort of think it's a lost art, right? All the talk these days is about recruiting and NIL. Like I said, the actual numbers games, especially in college football, college basketball, but even in college lacrosse, women's college lacrosse, it's kind of a lost art for the coaches in just knowing how to get the best out of your players. Even adjusting your coaching style to, hey, this girl responds really well to this. This girl responds really well to this. I can be more of like a dad, family, father figure to this girl, but this girl needs a little more tough love. As a coach, that's sort of in your job description, literally, to do. And I think we're seeing the rebirth of it, obviously, with Fran Brown at Syracuse football. But I do think that's lost a bit these days. It seems like the day in the life of a head coach is so much more of all of these other things, all of these other almost distractions than it is, hey, at the end of the day, you're a coach and your job is to get the best out of your players.
Completely agree, and I think that is really well said. At the end of the day, you say like it's in your job description to be able to cater to certain players. I honestly think there are some coaches who just don't do that though.
Yeah.
And to me, that doesn't make sense. I really think that it makes a lot more sense to just look at the player, look at what the player needs, and adjust your style accordingly. In my mind, that differentiates good coaches from great ones, but we'll see what happens with Thorpe. Beyond that, anything else that you wanted to say about Thorpe before we move on to some SU men's basketball here?
I just think it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, next lacrosse season is a long time away now, but I think it'll be interesting to see the community's sort of response to him. And I think it'll be interesting to kind of gauge what will be considered a success in his first season, right? Kayla Trainer did not have a bad 4 years here by any means. She went 59-24, 2 Final Four appearances. At the same time, as we've spoken about at length, Syracuse women's lacrosse was never able to get over that hump and win a national championship or really get over the Boston College hump. So it'll be interesting to see if Thorpe gets that sort of first-year coach mulligan kind of situation or if people are expecting a lot from him. To be honest, I've been vocal before in other situations how I think the first-year head coach mulligan situation can be appropriate. For a guy like Regy Thorpe, who has worked here for 9 years before, I'm not sure that it is. Obviously, he's going to take some time to get his footing and to get the ground under him, but I also think that this community it's high time for Syracuse women's lacrosse to bring home a national championship. And I think if he's able to do that in the first even 3 to 5 years, that would be considered a massive success.
He'll be a hero. His legacy will be cemented forever if he is the one to bring home the first title. And in a way, that's exciting, right?
Yeah.
I think, honestly, he's almost in a good spot because the Orange took a step back this past season.
I agree.
They finished 10-9. They lost to Yale in the second round of the NCAA tournament. That's not your general bread and butter Syracuse women's lacrosse team, nor their normal performance. So if he is able to surpass that in a way that almost, I think, is considered a success. But honestly, I would not be shocked at all to find out that he exceeds expectations in his first year based on already what we've seen from him, his recruiting strengths, and just the way that he is with the players. This is a guy who really cares. I also, with Syracuse women's lacrosse, or honestly even beyond that, it's so interesting to me to think about how many first-year head coaches we have welcomed in just the 2 or 3 years that we have been here.
I know.
It's so funny how many times we've come back around to that whole mulligan first-year conversation. I need you guys to understand, we were here for Jim Boeheim leaving and Adrian Autry coming in, FLJ coming in. I mean,
Fran Brown and Dino Babers.
Fran Brown, Dino Babers.
Now Regy
Gary
Thorpe.
Gate going over to the men's side.
Yep.
And Kayla Traynor taking over, and now Regy Thorpe.
We have quite literally actually seen turnover, as I'm sure fans recognize as well, in all 4 major head coaching positions at Syracuse in the last 5 years.
Five. It's crazy to think about.
5, yeah, you're right.
Unbelievable. Anyway, as far as the mulligan, I agree with you. I don't think he gets a mulligan. I also don't think he needs one. Syracuse men's basketball updates that we have for you. There's a new coach, and some players are arriving on campus. Let's start with the players. Via SU men's basketball social media, this year's team arrived to campus for summer workouts this weekend. It includes Kiyan Anthony, Sadiq White, as well as the transfers such as Nate Kings and Nate George. It's a new team, y'all. It's a new day.
I have something to say, and
I'm
sure that fans feel this way too. I feel like I'm speaking for the average Syracuse fan right now, and even the average college sports fan. Mm-hmm. It still remains an adjustment to me to essentially see an entirely new team walk in the door every June for men's college basketball. It is, we have JJ Starling and Donnie Freeman and nobody else that's ever been there. We have 2 holdovers from last season. It's so exciting, right? You're getting in your 2 top 25 recruits, Sadiq White and Kiyan Anthony, and all the other freshmen and the transfers from Georgia Tech, like you mentioned, and all of the other transfers, but it's sort of just crazy. It's even on the social media, just seeing them host this welcome, and it's like if you had it's like a new class every single year. You know what I mean? It's like the club is just full turnover every single year.
In a way, it's a double-edged sword, because if you really loved a lot of the players and you thought there was a great cohesive unit, and then there are people transferring out and there's all new faces, that's a bummer. But
well, yeah,
based on the season last year, wouldn't you say in a way it's a positive thing that there really is a fresh start here and a new opportunity and a new dawn for this team?
Yes, and I think that the only players who stayed in Starling and Donnie Freeman were the 2 that wanted to see it out, and obviously Starling, been here for a few years now, local kid, wants to see the turnaround. So I definitely think, I didn't mean that in a negative sense, I think it's a positive thing, especially for Syracuse to have a fully new team this year. I also just think it is still an adjustment, right? This era of college sports, to be like, oh, Syracuse men's basketball, I'm a fan, and I don't know anyone on the roster, because who are they?
I think there are times when you're witnessing a moment where things are truly shifting.
Yeah.
A seismic shift is happening and you don't even really probably know it until the end. That's what we're living in right now, whether people see it or not. Between the NIL and the transfer portal, you can like it or you can hate it, but college athletics is never going to be the same again.
Yeah.
And I think the faster people embrace that and welcome that change, the better, particularly coaches. You got to welcome that at this point. It's just a totally different kind of feel. And I get both sides of it, and I always will. What jerseys are you buying these days? What lasts more than a year? Who feels like buying a jersey of a player who's on a different team?
Right.
At the
such a
same
good
time,
point.
I
know.
That's just the way that the world is now. And hopefully for Syracuse men's basketball, it's a good thing to have a new era here. Because I'll tell you what, I really think that this year is in some ways make or break for Adrian Autry.
I think it absolutely is.
Especially when you think about the fact that Anthony is here now. It's great that he got Anthony because in a way it almost felt like that needed to happen. But now there is pressure that accompanies that.
Yeah.
You have the big recruits, so now we need to see what you're able to do with them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you have an Anthony jersey, you can recycle it now because Kiyan's officially on campus. Maybe you can buy Kiyan's jersey too and have a little duo pair there. So yeah, it's officially the Kiyan Anthony era, which I know is exciting for a lot of fans. Certainly expecting, Carmelo to be more present this year, be, at games around campus, the whole 9 yards. And I think that's a good thing, right? We saw what happened with this team last year, and I think that Adrian Autry and his coaching staff can use all the support from alumni, right? Fans, obviously, but former influences like Carmelo that they can get. And I know inevitably next season there'll be some controversy there, with Kiyan. Okay, Kiyan's dad is sitting there all the time. There's bound to be those question marks. But
I
think
as far as like playing time and starting him and whatnot?
I absolutely do. I think that's just natural when you're faced with a situation like this.
Yep.
But I also think a guy like Carmelo Anthony, who is synonymous with Syracuse basketball and really symbolizes everything positive that this program has ever ushered in, and the only national championship in 2003. I mean, why wouldn't you want him around?
Right. I know. See, I know that. I have to say that is going to be a little bit of a complicated situation.
It's going to be
think
controversial.
Even for Kiyan, right? Like, I don't know that I would necessarily want my dad around all the time and at practices if I'm there, because what message is that necessarily sending to the other players? That's a complex situation.
There's a balance. I definitely think there's a balance. I'm not saying he should be hovering around at practices and breathing down Autry's neck, certainly, because that's only going to breed problems. But I actually just think this whole thing with Kiyan is so interesting, right? Because you want to even take Carmelo out of it for a second. Kiyan's profile, like celebrity-wise, is just so much higher than all these other kids coming in. I even looked at like the social posts from Syracuse men's basketball this past weekend. Kiyan's got over 1,000 likes, a bunch of retweets, and everybody else like 100 likes. Like, hey, welcome Nate Kings, like 300 likes. And I think just like a balance like that, it's natural, right? Kiyan Anthony is the son of Carmelo Anthony. His mom is Lala Anthony. Kim Kardashian is sending him jackets, or he's sending jackets to Kim Kardashian. Like, they are celebrities.
Kim Kardashian's involved somehow.
Kim Kardashian's involved,
She's
for
involved.
better or for worse. The point is, their celebrity status is obviously so much higher than anyone we've seen around this program in a bit of time. So kind of watching that play out this season will be interesting as well.
And hey, you know what? Credit to the Syracuse men's basketball social media team for already beginning to capitalize on that. We always talk about the fact that it's a new world. A part of that is social media, is building your brand as a player, but also as an organization, getting people to want to come here. I mean, how truly blown out of proportion have we seen with the photo shoots that take place for recruits and commits? I mean, they're bringing out live
Honestly,
oxes.
it's a lot.
And
there's like
at
live
some point
animals,
we're going to need to really
Ferraris, fireworks.
We're going to need to take a breather, I think, at some point and just calm down. But honestly, it's like you always are competing with the next school and all their social media and whatnot. So to have him really as a weapon, and we'll just have to see how he gets used. Beyond that, the men's basketball team also hired Robert Strong Harris as the new director of strength and conditioning. It was confirmed in a press release just today. And man, oh man, this guy has some experience and a story to tell. He was part of the Kentucky men's basketball team for nearly 10 years. He was part of the Arkansas football team, Cincinnati Bengals, Ohio State Olympic sports strength and conditioning intern. Before that, I mean, he's been really a journeyman.
Yeah, his resume here coming into this role is quite extensive. Quite extensive experience here from Rob Strong. Also, you all know, I have to say it, if your incoming strength and conditioning coach goes by a nickname of Strong, that seems like
Strong
it's a
Harris.
positive.
I mean,
Fine, Strong Harris. But when I was doing a little research on this before the show today, what really piqued my interest the most was he spent 9 seasons at Kentucky. Obviously, Kentucky has crafted itself into one of the premier college basketball programs in the country. He was there for 9 years. It wasn't a little stopover. It wasn't a little 2-3 year situation. 9 seasons with Kentucky. During his tenure there, he trained more than 20 players who became NBA draft selections. They advanced to the NCAA tournament 7 times, including a Final Four trip while he was on the staff. And here's the real eye-popping thing. This, for a minute, I was like, now wait a minute. Obviously, he's the strength and conditioning guy. He's not like an assistant coach in the traditional sense on the staff, but he still contributes to these players' development and training and the like. During his time at Kentucky, he coached Devin Booker, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Karl Anthony Towns. That is quite the list if you're an NBA fan.
And honestly, I actually think that the strength and conditioning coach is one of those positions that goes so underappreciated at times and undervalued, it's not even funny. Because just as an example, when they brought in sort of a new strength and conditioning staff for the Syracuse football team, I mean, the transformations we were seeing were just so above and beyond that it almost was unbelievable.
Right.
From an injury standpoint, how many, or how really, it was like how many fewer injuries were there in that season with Fran Brown as opposed to Dino Babers towards the end of the season? I mean, you're seeing pictures coming out of offensive linemen who are losing 10, 20, 30, 40 pounds. Like, everyone's looking shredded. Everyone's looking jacked. In sports like football, in basketball, lacrosse, like that really matters, you know? Strength really matters. And just to know that there's someone who could be coming in with all this experience, not just in basketball, but even in football and in the NFL, it does make you wonder, how could someone like that behind the scenes maybe really impact a program like this from an injury standpoint and just a building of this team standpoint?
Especially college basketball is so unique in the fact that, I mean, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Quite literally, the college basketball season, these guys, I mean, they're out there starting workouts now. It's June. But even just think about the season, right? You're starting non-conference games, exhibition games, late October, November. You're trying to get to March. That is 5-6 months that these guys have to be out there prepared to go every day. And I think a program like Syracuse, where you've seen some really impactful injuries in the last few years, Donnie Freeman among them last season, having a new strength and conditioning coach is a really great sign. So obviously, you know, those names were so impressive that he coached at Kentucky and that he kept healthy. I mean, even especially right now, the NBA Finals just wrapped up. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander just won the title, and Karl Anthony Towns was in it until the Eastern Conference Finals.
I got to see what this guy looks like. Did you happen to come across a photo of him?
Rob Strong?
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks strong.
I mean, I would imagine. Is he bald? Is he like mean looking? Does he have a full head of hair?
He looks like he means business in a way that I feel like is
required for a strength and conditioning coach.
He looks like a strength and conditioning coach.
I will say, I feel like a lot of strength and conditioning coaches sort of have a similar look to them, and they mean business. It's giving bodyguard.
The Syracuse football strength and conditioning coach, that guy's name's Chad. He looks like a strength and conditioning coach. He looks like he could kill you.
Wait, I was going to say, he looks like Secret Service for the President of the United States.
He does.
He is insane. But I love that. I feel very empowered when I see a strength and conditioning coach who honestly looks like they could kill you with their bare hands. That's what I'm wanting for the Syracuse programs.
I agree entirely. So just some more stats on players he's developed. He has had 26 players drafted at the NBA, 19 first-round picks, 6 top 10 picks, 4 All-Americans, 4 Conference Players of the Year, and 1 number 1 overall pick, which was Karl Anthony Towns in 2015 by the Timberwolves. And you know what? I know all that's names and numbers and stats, and you might glaze over that for a second, but I do have to say, if I'm Kiyan Anthony or Sadiq White, or even Donnie Freeman for that matter, looking at that really intrigues me.
Do not underestimate the value of a great strength and conditioning coach. We'll see what he brings to the table. Strong. Let's see what you got. With that nickname, I'm
better live up to it.
Yeah, hell yeah. Syracuse football. We're doing a little bit of a class of 2026 roundup because you guys know Fran Brown is doing some things behind the scenes. He's been
cooking.
Here and there.
He never stops cooking, really.
He's been doing a couple things, a couple podcasts, and he's been recruiting. They are up to 23 commits in the class of 2026. That ranks 25th nationally according to 24/7 Sports, but 7th in the ACC. Also, that number, 23 commits, is somewhere within the top 3 or 4 in the entire country. There are only maybe 3, if not 2 teams that have more recruits in the class of 2026, or commits, I should say. So that's a big deal. It's not just a matter of the number, but it's the caliber of guys who are coming here. It's the holes that are being filled that desperately needed to be filled. And one example that just comes to the top of my mind is the number 1 punter in the class of 2026, Jimmy Gregg, who we spoke with earlier this week. Listen, no one on this podcast is going to say anything today that you don't already know or you haven't already heard. But the reality is, when Fran Brown came in here and said, "You're going to hire me because I'm a good recruiter," he absolutely meant that shit. And you're seeing that play out day in and day out.
Yeah. Official visit season came to a close this last weekend, and this is impressive just in terms of time frame. Syracuse actually picked up 10 verbal commitments in the last month alone. That's a lot. 10 in a month is we are out here cooking. So I think, Fran Brown spoke, to your point, so much about when he got this job, really wanting to build the program from the ground up, building a program, even though these days the transfer portal is very important, utilizing it to your advantage, which we saw his ability to do last year with Kyle McCord and Fidel Diggs. Even though that's all important and you have to, play both sides of this game as a head coach, it's so important still, the high school recruiting, the literally building your program from the ground up, because without that, you have no depth. Without that, as Dino Babers would say, all your depth gets bought away.
Yep.
That's what happens if you don't build on the high school trenches. And so we're seeing Fran Brown and his staff's commitment to doing that. That's what building a program looks like, right? I'm not trying to, trash on the previous staff of Dino Babers and that whole regime, but it's not good enough anymore to say, we're Syracuse, we can only get these 3 stars and these unranked guys, and we're going to have the 60th, 70th ranked class nationally every year. That's not going to get you where you want to go. So to see their emphasis on it, and again, their emphasis on literally building it from the start, from level 1, is fantastic.
And listen, honestly, when it comes to Dino Babers and Fran Brown, there's sort of, I think, 2 things going on there. Dino Babers was underperforming in football, but also on the recruiting trail. But Fran Brown is overperforming in such a way that I don't know that we've ever seen at Syracuse. So it's kind of those 2 things happening at the same time, at least in my eyes. This podcast, it has been well documented that we go on the record and say that Fran Brown is doing unprecedented things and things that you might not have heard of, and even things that other college coaches across the country aren't doing. But let me tell you exactly what I do mean by that, because this conversation that I had with Jimmy Gregg the other day really was insightful and showed me a lot of things that honestly I didn't know. When they were on that trip, Jimmy Gregg and a couple of the other recruits who were debating whether or not they wanted to commit to Syracuse football, these are the kinds of things that are going on. Jimmy Gregg told me that he got there at 9 p.m. on Thursday, and that one of the assistant coaches went to meet him at the airport at 9 o'clock just so that he could be there when he landed and be there to greet him and show him around. They had Olivia Stomsky, who is the director of the Newhouse Sports Media Center at Syracuse, come in and talk to all of them about potential careers in sports broadcasting, just in case they were interested in that profession. Greg told me no other school did that. Fran Brown had them over to his house on Father's Day. Fran Brown's father. He had them over to his house as well as the families, and they had gifts for the fathers of the recruits ready and waiting.
Right.
Last but not least, he told me that everybody had a gift bag, a welcome packet. And in the welcome packet, it said, this is Syracuse University's acceptance rate. And for Jimmy Gregg particularly, these are Jack Stonehouse's current stats, and this is what you could do, as well as a list of all of the punters who went to Syracuse who ended up having a career in the NFL. That level of detail we need to be discussing. Like, understand this is not just something we say. Like, the D and Dart is really happening on these trips in a way that I didn't even know about until I started speaking to some of these recruits. The Father's Day thing really touched me. Like, that just blows me away because somebody is setting this up, right? Somebody is getting these presents together. I don't know if it's Fran or someone else. What a smart, thoughtful idea. Not to mention selfless when you yourself are a father. It takes away time from his own family and kids. Yeah. And they're all willing to do it because they know how much this means to him.
Yeah, and not to mention, right, these are kids that, this isn't like this is your team that's committed to you. These are kids that you're trying to reel in. You have no idea if they're going to come to Syracuse. They could go pick, I don't know, name your other school. They could go right off into the sunset, and one time they went to Fran Brown's house on Father's Day. You know, I know that's how it works now in college recruiting, but it's still, like you said, so selfless of Fran to, I guess, put himself in that role and to really commit to it like that. I think it's all summed up by, like, we talk a lot about, we were just talking about the Dino Babers versus Fran Brown debate. Dino Babers was okay with mediocrity, and Fran Brown is literally repulsed by the idea of mediocrity, and he's going to do every single thing in his power to make sure that Syracuse never feels like that again. Everything.
That is literally so true. He's disgusted
Repulsed
by anything other than greatness. And it really shows. And honestly, it's not just a matter, at least to me. Listen, a lot of these kids are young guys, so I get it why bringing out a live ox for the photo shoot is tantalizing to some. But I think Fran Brown is just smarter than that. Like, he's thinking about the parents and the families. To me, I don't know, maybe not as an 18-year-old kid, but definitely now as a 27-year-old, I'm thinking, wow, the fact that he got gifts for everybody's fathers means a whole lot more to me than whatever that ox was brought in for.
No,
you know?
I totally agree. I totally agree. And we're seeing Fran, kind of also walk the line between that. He is smart enough to also know that for some recruits, they want the photo shoot and the ox and the cars and the big lights and so it's doing everything in a way that's going to appeal to a variety of audiences and a variety of kids and what they want out of their college and recruiting experience. I also think if you're a school like Syracuse, right, they do have some of the most commits in the country in this class of 2026. They have no 5 stars. They have 4 4-stars and 18 3-stars. Now those, and I've seen people say this online, are some numbers that look a bit similar to Dino Babers, right? In terms of the 3 stars. But I think where this recruiting staff differs when we've spoken to them, when we've gotten the opportunity at the end of spring football and the end of fall camp and the season and whatnot, because they're very open and available to the media, which is also refreshing, is that they're looking for the diamonds in the rough. And if you're a school like Syracuse, that's how you have to operate. You have to get the 3-star guy that you've watched his tape and you and 2 of your other recruiting staffers have fallen in love with it and you really think you can make something out of him. You have to find the Justin Barons and the Marlo Waxes of the world who were not highly touted recruits and turn them into something. And those are 2 obviously from the Dino Babers era that he had success in. But obviously the goal is to now stack those guys and get more and more of that.
And you know what? That's okay. When you're a school like Syracuse, you are competing with other schools that absolutely, without a doubt, have more money and more resources than you. That's just a fact.
When you're a school like Syracuse, you have to be in those recruiting trenches in a way that the Alabamas, Ohio States, and LSUs of the world don't. Sure, they're looking for the best kids too, but you probably, on the Syracuse football recruiting staff, are doing significantly more work than they are, than some of those guys were doing at Georgia, because you have to, right? You have to find the diamonds in the rough.
100%. At the end of the day, Alabama might not be having gifts for all of the fathers, but everybody wants to go to Alabama.
Exactly.
Right? Like, not everybody wants to, and it has not been everybody's dream necessarily to go to Syracuse football. But at some point, we all know that Fran Brown's long-term goal is to make Syracuse become one of those programs where when you're a younger kid, and particularly you're from the Northeast, you're thinking, I want to go play for Syracuse. But it's one of those chicken and egg things. Something has to come first, and if you want kids to feel that way, then your school has to be that desirable and that well-known and that successful that you're competing with all of those other schools that are getting the 5 stars. Right now, Syracuse isn't that, but with a guy like Fran Brown, who's to say maybe you could be?
100%. The last thing I just found interesting with this is that there were 6 commits from Florida and 3 from Virginia. So you're really seeing that Southern influence, which is also important, right? Have your stronghold on the Northeast, but also you got to do well in Florida. You got to do well in the South. 7 from PA and New Jersey and 3 more from the Delaware, Maryland area. So 6 commits from Florida. I'd like to see that, right? That's an area that your Miamis, your FSUs are really have a stronghold on those kids. If you're Syracuse, you can win some territory around there. That's only a good thing.
Very, very nice. Good to see a little bit of diversity amongst the places there. Well, everyone, thank you so much, as always, for being with us. We appreciate you being here. Like, comment, subscribe, and we will see you back here next week. Thanks so much for being here.